Hey guys, welcome back to my podcast / now video channel, Reel It In. Our special guest again is Connor. And the topic we're going to have today is both Wonder Woman movies. Me, not really a DC fan, like in comparison with Marvel and DC, definitely a Marvel person. So I didn't really go too deep into this Wonder Woman movies, like critically, but these are my thoughts on them. And, yeah. So I have officially seen both Wonder Woman movies. I did not originally see the first one when it came out like 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. I saw it for the first time like 2 days ago on whenever this on HBO or whatever. I didn't go to theaters. I was very safe. So I saw it on HBO.
I got the resources. So
yeah, he's my dealer anyway. But I kind of wish actually that I did see it when it first came out, because, you know, for 3 years, if I ever mentioned the first Wonder Woman movie, everyone's always telling me how good it was, how they felt so like empowered after watching it. And just like that, it itself was like a really good movie. And I think this is also why whenever I do see a movie for the first time, I don't like looking at it critically. I just like to watch the movie without any expectations, because I find that I enjoy it more. But because I was led to believe that the Wonder Woman had so much hype, like in a way I was expecting it to be more hyped than how I like took it in for the first time. Like, were you hyped when you first saw it?
I think if I remember correctly, I saw it in theaters. I'm trying to remember. And in case any of our frequent listeners or watchers know, I have a terrible memory. Anyway, I recall watching it in the theater, and to compare it to a film, say like Captain Marvel, I walked out of the theater and I was not disappointed. Like, there are definitely things in the first Wonder Woman that, you know, are common, like Hollywood movie tropes and this and that, but like overall you're just like, this was a good film. And at the time it was a good fresh start from DC, because I think before that they had Man of Steel, they had Batman v Superman, and then Justice League, if I'm remembering correctly, and then Wonder Woman came out, and it, like, all three of those were just absolute just clusterfucks of films. So it was, I think you were looking at it from a more hopeful perspective, and you're like, all right, I'll take it. But at the end of the day, even with all that in retrospect, it's still a pretty good film.
I did enjoy it. I think I was just expecting like almost every moment to be like this powerful, like action-packed like sequence, you know, with Wonder Woman just being amazing all the time, which is not good character, by the way. So like, whatever. But I think this is something that I noticed in both films, is that like, yes, there are like action moments, and then the action moments are very like action packed, but then like a lot of the rest of the film is very like, in comparison, like kind of quiet. Like, there's a lot of like walking.
Well, so I think that's something that the first one did really well, is that she is like super powerful and you know, is a demigod. So in the same way of Thor, they're hugely powerful by nature. But she's not all powerful and arrogant. Like, she's still, I kind of don't mind all that walking around that you're talking about, because it really actually does a lot for her character. She's very fish out of water, because she's never met a man before this point in her life, first of all, which for anyone you meet someone of your attraction that you've never experienced before, and you're just like, wow, you're already awestruck. But then she has never experienced the rest of Earth and civilization, and she obviously knows nothing about the world war that's going on at the time. So I actually think it's fair. It does sometimes, it drags a little bit with the pacing, but I don't think it's the worst. Like I think it actually allows a lot for character development and character growth between her and Steve Trevor.
I kept calling him Steven, and I just found out today that his actual name is Steve. I was like, Steven Trevor, it sounds a little interesting, but Steve Trevor sounds a lot better.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I swear she called him Steven at least once. Probably. And then he was like, I think it's Steve. Anywho. Also, for those of you who don't know, I'm like a real big Greek mythology nerd, and just I like any mythologies in general. And this isn't a critique, it's just something I think is kind of funny that the mythologies for this, and I understand they're taking creative freedom, I understand, but it's not accurate.
In case you couldn't tell, I'm rolling my eyes.
Yeah, because in the movie she's described as a god.
Yeah, and she's talking about Ares and
yeah, and she's because
it's there's a whole nother universe within that. So
yeah, I understand that, but just in actuality, because for those of you who don't know, the Amazon queen and Zeus had a daughter, which you find out at the very end of the first movie. But basically it's yeah, so you're actually a god. You are a demigod. Thor is god. He's actual god though. So anyways, also just one thing that really bugged me was when Ares, it is true, Ares is a son of Zeus. He is the god of war. He did not actually make people evil. Yeah, evil. That was sort of in a way Prometheus, but that was involuntary. But anyways, also when he just pulled the lightning bolts out of thin air, I was like, only Zeus can do that. Anyways, and it's not a complaint, just as a Greek mythology connoisseur, sort of, I was like, I was like, okay, lovely.
Star Wars.
Yeah, it's like you in Star Wars, basically. But yeah, I there was a lot of good moments in the first Wonder Woman that I liked a lot. I think the one that stuck with me the most and actually got me a little bit emotional is the scene where she lifts herself out of the trench, and she basically runs over,
takes off the coat.
Yeah, and she runs through no man's land to fight. Mm-hmm. That's probably that's my favorite scene in that whole movie. Yeah,
that's definitely, I think, probably the most powerful moment in that whole film. And like I said, that really builds up to her character, that she doesn't know that humanity has been through this time and time and time again, and from that time period will do it time and time again, and are still doing that, and will probably continue. Unfortunately, I feel within our lifetimes we won't see the kind of change that I think Diana wants and expects, as many of us do. But it's such a powerful build up to have her seeing that, because there's that one other scene too where they're going through no man's land and or they're on their way through the trenches, and they're seeing people evacuated from their homes, and there's babies crying and people are dying, and she wants to go over and help this guy who lost his arm and this guy who got shot, and Steve and the rest of the crew are we got to keep going, we got to keep moving, and she just wants to help everybody. So when she finally has that moment where she takes off her coat and she's in her armor too, and she just goes straight into them and just gives them total hell, and it's just very powerful. The only critique is in those moments. My only gripe, I think, is in those moments there's a lot of the like posing. There's a lot of posing, and that is honestly my biggest and one of the only gripes with this film. Is I'm not a Greek mythology connoisseur, as you say, so I mean that doesn't bother me. Most of the story makes sense to me, and just having that moment there, and then at the moment at the end where she's able to just kind of overcome everything that she has experienced and actually apply it to her power is a nice change for a strong woman character.
Yeah, I do agree with the posing moments. They were a lot.
It'd be nice to see those actual moments as opposed to those like really weird close-ups where it's like in slow motion. Like I want to actually see her doing this stuff and stuff that Gal Gadot as an actress trained for, and that the character Diana is capable of.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the slow motions, like I feel like save those for like real big things, but don't do like every couple seconds. Just like, oh, she's spinning in the air. Oh, she's about to kick this person. We're gonna show you every like millisecond of it. Like that's fine. I don't need to see that. Just like have her do some like cool stunts, like but on normal speed or whatever. Even not even just in Wonder Woman, but just like in any film, like the anti-gravity stuff, I'm always just like you have to pick the right moments to do that. I'm not like, okay, in the weird comparison to Mulan, I like the anti-gravity moments in Wonder Woman better because like they did a good job in setting up like the fantasy aspect. Like Wonder Woman, yeah, like Wonder Woman's not like from Earth. She's this demigod Amazonian like warrior, you know, and then in Mulan she's supposed to be an ordinary girl, and yet she can like moonwalk, but like the anti-gravity moonwalk, not Michael Jackson moonwalk, like the actual on the moon. Yeah, the actual no gravity walk. Yeah, so that was something that I think was believable because, you know, like I said, she's not from Earth. Okay, I want to go to the end real quick with the situation about Ares, because, you know, it sets up in the beginning, like we have this myth that like Zeus was the only god who was able to defeat Ares, but Ares has a way of coming back, and you know he's back because he sets up like this evil intention and like war basically like in men in the population, and throughout the movie you're kind of like you're sort of like set up to believe like, is Ares like real or is he not? And like what is Wonder Woman going to like find out about him? Because I was sort of like, there was a moment where I was like, maybe Ares like isn't actually real, and this is supposed to be like a learning curve.
Figment of her imagination.
Well, not necessarily just like a figment, just like something that she was brought up to believe that like doesn't actually turn out to be true, you know, like, and her realizing that sometimes people are just like this is something that she'd have to go through and have to deal with. Was there like any moment where you were like, oh, maybe Ares isn't actually real, or were you certain like he was going to be real the whole time?
So without knowing too much about like the depths of the DC universe and both this new canon and legends and the comics and stuff like that, I kind of just assumed that it was real. But I think part of his message, which kind of bouncing back to what I said before about mankind just going through the same mistakes over and over, so he's not wrong. So I think the flaw in the story is saying that, or claiming that Ares is who made mankind bad, because if you kill Ares, but they're still doing this, like, you know, I think maybe at that point you kind of have to take a look back and just assume that you were being told something by an unreliable narrator, or a narrator that, you know, isn't God and doesn't actually know the history of the universe. So I think it was real. One thing that I'm wondering is if it is kind of one of those things where like it's just a physical manifestation of Ares at that time, but like his essence, his spirit kind of like transfers, and for whatever reason, you know, it takes like a lot of energy or power or whatever to manifest a physical being that can be on Earth. I don't know, but that's just kind of a thought that I just had. But I definitely think it was still real, and I think that the message is still very real and is a cautionary tale that, you know, has been told throughout time.
Staying with towards the end of the movie, a thought that I just had is, like you said earlier, that, you know, Wonder Woman's power, you know, it accumulates towards the end and she's finally able to defeat Ares, but that only happens like after Steve Trevor like sacrifices himself, which like is heartbreaking, you know, for us and her, because like they loved each other obviously. But there's a part of me that wonders, like, there's sort of like, I forget which culture it is, but there's like a belief that in order for you to like achieve like full power, you have to sort of like let go of like all earthly materials or everything that like attaches you.
It's like a form of Buddhism, I think.
Maybe. I know it's one of the Asian cultures. I just can't remember exactly which one it is.
I think it might be Buddhism, although I'll fact check that later. But I think they tend to be very minimalist in belongings and their place on Earth. But like I said, I'll look into it.
Yeah, but so like,
correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who feels.
But there's part of me that wonders, like, is that kind of what happened? Like how she was able to like be very powerful? Because usually like in storytelling, like I didn't really see like a culmination of like her new like knowledge to help her be powerful. Maybe I'm just like missing it.
I think with her relationship with Steve Trevor and experiencing humanity other than, you know, her culture of Amazonian women, I think it goes to show though her relationship with Steve Trevor and experiencing humanity, that it's very different than what she expects, but because her heart is in the right place and because she wants to do actual good, and she's saying that no one really has the power to do that except for her and obviously the gods, but they're not going to do anything about that. In fact, one of them is, you know, against her, is the enemy. So I think it might just come to that like realization that she has all the power to make whatever change that she feels is necessary. And then she obviously builds a connection with Steve throughout the film, and he's like super honest with her whether she's using her lasso of truth or not. I think the fact that they built that kind of trust in such a short amount of time goes to show the kind of chemistry that those two characters are supposed to have. So I think in that moment, it's just like one of those like the last straw kind of moments where it when he decides to sacrifice himself and he jumps in the plane with the gases and just flies just straight up. You're kind of taking a rubber band and you're stretching it as far as you can, and then when he pulls the trigger, that's when the rubber band breaks on multiple accounts. So I think that was just her rubber band moment.
So basically, like, her full power was her like realizing like what humanity really is, basically.
And her connection with it.
So I don't really have like too much to say about the first one. I think overall I'll give it like an 85 out of 100. So you liked it? Cool. I liked it too. Like I said, I think I overhyped myself. I should have just gone in like not expecting anything, because that's what I usually do for movies anyways. So that's all I have to say on the first one. Is there anything else that you wanted to really add?
They're very little things, and we'll get to this when we kind of compare the two. But overall, I like it. I think it's a good film. I thought it was a good starting point starting point for Wonder Woman is Diana. So we'll see where it goes.
Also, another fun fact that I think is kind of funny is that like a lot of this is just like loosely based off of Greek mythology, but I just think it's funny that her name Diana is the Roman name for Athena, which I think is kind of funny. Anyway, fun fact for you guys to know. So we'll just move right on in to
Wonder Woman 1984.
Wonder Woman 1984. Okay, so it starts off. I know that the beginning is where we're gonna have our most of our comments probably. So it starts off with a flashback of sorts where it's like young Wonder Woman. And this is where like this, I even had this.
Young Diana.
Okay, young Diana. Okay, well, they're the same person, really. Yeah, so it starts off with young Diana. And, okay, so my first thought I had even while watching it was that like.
Well, spoilers for Wonder Woman 1984, just by the way.
Oh, yeah, spoilers. I always forget to do the spoiler warning. For the first one, like, it's been 3 years. And, like, if you're like me, like. Yeah. So, spoilers for 84. Okay. Anyways, so it starts off with Diana, and she's competing in this Amazonian, like, Olympic Games in a way, sort of. But, like, a thought I had, like, while watching it was that this seems like a continuity error because the Queen of the Amazons, like Diana's mom, did not want Diana like learning to be a warrior. She didn't want Diana like knowing about like her true self for whatever reason. Oh, because like she
is the god killer.
The age when the Queen let Diana like become a warrior was a lot older than when we see her like competing in the games. So like that's a continuity error because I feel like her not training would also involve her not competing, and they're like dangerous things that they're doing too. And like it was just kind of like it was very long, and it would make sense if like I liked the world building of it, but it would make more sense if like you were going to continue building the Amazon world later in the movie, which like you did not do at all.
Because you don't go back.
Yeah, you don't go back. I would like to see like more Amazonian world building, maybe in the third one. Like I don't know if like the island's like dying or something. I don't know. But yeah, so that was just like, and then the message. I understand that like you have that scene to set up the message that is supposed to be later on in the movie. Like as a writing perspective, I understand that's what that scene was supposed to be for. But like the ending message, I feel like was not what was first taught to Diana.
I definitely would have taken that scene out completely. Apparently a lot of the studio writers and DC, like the studio, told Patty Jenkins to take that scene out, as well as the one that precedes that, which we'll talk about in a second. But they told her to take it out, and she said no. And I really think that they should have. I mean, I didn't realize the continuity error until you had said it, but that's a very good point that kind of negates the whole struggle that Diana faces as an adolescent, as a child in the first one. Because there was that whole strict, like, you're not going to compete, you're not going to train, you're not going to be this god killer, you're not going to learn about any of this stuff until we feel you are ready, which is when you're a full-blown adult. Whereas like having her compete in these games when she's like 7 years old really kind of just undermines that whole, like it would have been one thing had it not been Diana's mother. Like if say she for whatever reason wasn't there, or had the wool pulled over her eyes and Diana was competing in the contest and it was
the general.
Yeah, just the general. But if it was the general who, kind of urged her to do that, because she urged her to train in the first one. So had there just been like a little nuance there, I think maybe that would have made sense, but it's still very long and it really doesn't do that much to introduce the message of the overall film, I feel. And it kind of, the two opening scenes that, again, were both told to be cut out, really do a lot of damage for expectations and just what you think the tone of the film is going to be, which just kind of makes it very sloppy, but it's just my opinion.
Yeah, if you're trying to do the message, like, make that scene shorter, pick a different scenario, because ultimately, like, she cheated to get like where she was, she cheated to win, basically. And then the general, like, right before she's about to like throw the spear that signifies her win or whatever, the general like literally like pulls her out of the air and like,
which I didn't think was cheating originally. When I saw it at first, I thought that was her just improvising.
Yeah, I thought it was improvising too, because she falls off her horse. Like, she's in the lead and she falls off her horse.
Like, is she supposed to like stay on the trail and run the trail? I thought because it was like kind of out in the open at that point, everything is fair game.
Yeah, I mean, she did miss like shooting that blue smoke thing.
Yeah, she didn't
so
shoot the arrow, but...
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was very confused on how that exactly was cheating. I thought it was supposed to show like her ingenuity. That's what I thought it was supposed to show.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Anyways, we'll get to the message when we get to the end, because that's really where like the whole message of the movie is supposed to like show itself. But I don't know. You can pick a shorter scene, have her do something else, and just be like, "That's not truth, Diana." Even like her being like denied her own like backstory could have been like a message for truth, you know? Like you could have stuck with that and not have that continuity error. But anyways,
It's a completely different thing.
Yeah. So now we'll get to the next scene, which is a heist at the mall. I feel like malls were a very new and big thing in the 80s. Because I know Stranger Things also has like a mall thing, and they're like back then. I also understand that you're setting up like the problem. Like you have that weird gemstone thing that it's like this woman has like a black market jewelry shop thing, and the camera zooms in on this one item, so you know it's going to be important. But
MacGuffin.
yeah, but like, and then these armed men steal this, and they're like running around the mall basically, and then like Wonder Woman shows up, and she takes forever to lasso them together, and everyone's just like running around, and it's very colorful, and I'm just like, girl, like all you got to do is just whip that like maybe 4 times and it's over. Like there was just a lot of like, it was just they were doing a lot. Everyone was doing a lot.
That whole scene is a mess. So if you were gonna replace one or the other, you know, at least for terms of tone, I would pick that opening scene. But the second, and this is where a lot of the cheese comes from that people are complaining about, and it also goes back to the weird misdirection of expectations, because it's so cheesy. It is so like aesthetically cheesy. You can tell that some of these people are on wires, and that some of them probably were not real people, that it was like dummies, and it just doesn't do a lot for, and it doesn't always have to. It doesn't always have to do something for the story, but it doesn't do anything for the tone. It just does not look good. It's just very sloppy. But it also doesn't really trail back to anything in terms of the story. So maybe I missed it. Maybe I glazed over it, that these guys were supposed to be working for the villain of the film, Max Lord. And I thought maybe it was going to trail back to that. So like, who are they working for? Who are these guys working for? Are they like, it's just very unclear, and it's a real mess. That whole first act is just such a mess.
I only got the fact that they were working for Max Lord when like Diana finds like the slip of paper in the box, the carton, when it gets to the museum, and it says like Max Lord on it. Like that's the only time I was like, oh, okay, they were working for the bad guy. Because at first you're just like, why do they want this rock? You know, like I understand that like you needed that one part of that scene to set up like this is going to be important, but you didn't need everything else that happened afterwards. Also, like Wonder Woman has been alive for a good number of years now. You're telling me she can't whip those guys up 1, 2, 3? Also, is this supposed to be like a Spider-Man thing? Like she doesn't want anyone to know her identity?
I guess.
Okay, because girl, like you postured yourself in the World War, you know? Maybe that's why, because then I'm like, oh, she like, it's the same woman or something.
Maybe.
I don't know. So then the next two characters we're introduced to, and they're the next two new characters, are Barbara, who is, I can't remember if she's an intern or if she actually like got a job there.
She's got
a job. Okay. She looks exactly like our friend. Kristen Wiig in glasses and like frizzy hair like that, looks exactly like our friend. So it's kind of funny.
So friend, if you're watching.
Friend. Wink, wink, if you see this. But basically she's someone who is kind of clumsy, and like she goes very unnoticed by like society, and you can tell that like even though she tries to like fit in, she like doesn't really by society's standards. But you can also tell that she's like endearing, and probably she's a friend actually that I probably would want to have actually.
I've been her. Yeah. I've been her at certain points of my life.
I've been her too. So she starts out like very relatable and like sweet and
quirky, dorky.
Yeah, and just like cute overall. Yeah. So I started off like really liking her character, and then almost immediately afterwards we're introduced to Max Lord, who like via trailers you kind of already know is gonna be like the bad dude. Yeah. I did not watch any of the trailers
I watched the teaser.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of the trailers for 84 until like last night, and they give a lot of screen time to Kristen Wiig, so like you kind of know like what's gonna happen with her, which I didn't really wish they did, but that makes me glad that I didn't watch it like beforehand. Maxwell Lord is what you at first glance is like a rich entrepreneur in the oil industry, and at first you think he's this very rich man who has all this money because of his dealings in oil. You quickly find out that is not the case at all. He is quite broke. Yeah.
Life is good, but it could be better. Let's cut that.
No, keep it. That was so good. I wish he kept his accent in this one.
What accent?
He didn't. His like Hispanic accent.
Oh, well, it's acting. He's a great actor.
He is a great actor, but I like his accent, so I just, for me, would have liked to see
that's
it.
That's objective, though.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, he's not very rich, which also leads me. So quick story time. That stone that we see being taken from the robbery gets transported to the museum to get like analyzed and by Barbara, Kristen Wiig's character, because FBI don't know what to do. Anyway. Ooh. Anyway.
To be fair, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a specialty.
It is a specialty. And then so Maxwell character, to get into this area, he donates a very large amount of money to that department, which is the geology department. But if he's broke, how did he donate?
Maybe he's not that broke.
Well, I mean, but he's like losing investors and stuff.
Maybe he had that money at the time, but immediately loses it. But also, I feel I could write a check for $250,000, and if you're really not thinking too hard about it, you just assume that I have that kind of money until you go to cash that check. But by then they had already given him the stone, and it kind of digresses from there. But I think they just assumed, maybe because of his because of his business personality and his TV personality. And maybe he had that amount of money, like I said, at the time, but then immediately loses it because of investment failure and fraud and all this other crazy stuff.
Like, did you not check your bank account when you deposited it? Like, I don't know. It's also like, you have to keep in mind, like, my mom always tells me, like my mom always tells me, like, before 9/11, like, security anywhere was very lax. Like, you could probably get away with like a lot of stuff. Nowadays, not so much. But anyway, so we find out through actions actually that this stone is like a wishing stone. So if you wish upon it, like, your wish becomes granted. Right? Yeah. And then and we obviously understand that like Max, he wants this stone for himself because of his failing business. Eventually he gets the stone, and I was actually like, I'll give the movie this. I was shocked for what he wished for, because in my mind I was like, oh, he's going to use the stone. He's going to wish for like a successful business, you know, and like he wants like money and power and stuff. That's what I thought he was going to wish for. But what he wished for was to turn himself into the stone. So like whatever properties or powers the stone had would be imbued into him. I was shocked. I was real shocked. And like the stone looks like crumbling to dust. I was just like, like, that was like, so, you know, you guys did that good. Misdirection. I was shocked. But basically, so Barbara also wishes upon the stone after she has like a lunch date with Diana that she wants to be like just like Diana. And then throughout certain scenes you see her, like, she gets stronger and
more self-aware.
Yeah, and more like confident, and the people also look at her differently, you know, like sexually attracted to her, and just
general charm.
And then that road sort of leads them to become the villains of the movie. But what I like about these two villains is that they're not typical like super hero movie villain.
They're not evil for the sake of being evil. They're unfortunately evil. As it explains later, it's like the monkey's paw. It takes as much as it gives. So Barbara ends up losing a lot of her like personability and her natural kind of quirky charm, and just it takes it in a completely different direction. And it's your catch-22 in your wishes, is that she just becomes this terribly jealous, envious, vindictive person. And then Max loses, well, he just goes crazy because he is the wishing stone, and then he essentially loses his physical state the more he wishes,
the more he grants wishes.
Yeah, so it's nice to see a villain that is understandable, and those are the ones that I think. So you have this guy who you understand him. You don't think, you know, any more of him, but you understand why he is the way he is. And they're at least compelling villains is what I'm getting at.
Because usually it's like superhero villains, like their character's there to be like the bad guy. Mm-hmm. But like with these guys, like they didn't start off like as evil people. They were evil or bad just because of like certain choices that they make in life, or like, you know, consequences and circumstances that like have led to where they are. And because, you know, they just desired something that they didn't have, but like, you know, it comes at a cost. Because like, you know, the monkey's paw thing that we mentioned. Consequences. I think it is actually really interesting that like we see throughout the movie that Max Lord, in order to get what he wants, he like grants someone's wishes, and then as payment he takes what he needs, basically. Mm-hmm. But I think it's interesting that like as everyone's wish like gets granted, the world becomes like more into chaos. And I think like you could probably drum up an argument that like maybe sometimes we aren't always supposed to get what we want, you know?
Well, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. But still, like, I just think it's like because he only grants everyone like one wish, you know. So it's like,
I only get one.
well, yeah.
Unless you are the stone.
But I just think it's interesting that like if my wish was to be like a successful like writer, like that could somehow throw the world like out of balance. Like, what do you think about that?
So in the DC universe, at least in the comics, so I had to read the Sandman series for one of my classes this last semester. And there is this, in one of the volumes, there's this muse that essentially if you have sexual relations with her, she'll grant your greatest desire. And it's kind of gross. I think it's volume 3 of Sandman. Anyway, he ends up doing that, and he wishes for exactly that. He's a struggling writer, and he wishes to become a hugely successful writer, and he does. But as soon as word gets to Sandman, to Morpheus, that he essentially raped this muse and then asked for this kind of greedily, or he greedily asks for this wish to be granted, he goes fine, and starts like making it so he can't stop writing. He goes insane, and like his nails get really long, and he starts like writing his things like into him. It's really gruesome. I mean, it is the Sandman series, but it's not the first time that DC has gone into that kind of realm where, be careful what you wish for. The monkey's paw takes as much as it gives.
Basically, the catch is that the stone takes what you like hold most dear to yourself in payment for like the wish that you asked for. So like in Barbara's case, it was her like quirky personality and what made her like, at least for us to the audience, like a lovable person and character. And then oddly enough for Diana, it was her power. Like you see throughout the movie that her power is weakening because she wishes for Steve Trevor to come back, like for her love to be back, which he comes back in someone else's body. Okay, so
heard it before. You'll hear it again.
But like, okay, so at first I thought they were gonna do a time travel to bring like Steve back, and I'm someone who like, if a movie does time travel, like you have to do it perfectly. I don't like time travel in certain movies unless it's a movie about time travel. What? I don't like it.
It's not all bad.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm just very particular about it, and that's a me thing. So I kind of like the way that they brought him back. But also I have a question. Did he even need to be brought back?
I'll answer your question first, and then I'll digress until the thoughts running around in my brain. So I think in the same way that the first one, he was kind of there to expand upon Diana's character. I think maybe yes, because he was, the catalyst for everything that she had done, like we just talked about in the first Wonder Woman. So I would argue yes, in a way. And it makes, a lot of people are saying it doesn't make sense how he came back. It actually makes perfect sense. But the way that they went about it and some of the things that they do don't really bode all that well. One of the biggest things being like, essentially Steve Trevor's consciousness is in this just random man's body.
They get very close.
They get very close, and they do the thing. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, this other man is essentially unconscious in a way. So I think what people are starting to call out is if the roles are reversed, people would be up in arms. They would be furious about it. So, I think it makes sense in the way that they did it. It's just the lengths that they go at certain parts just are a little eyebrow raising. But I mean, it would be nice, and I really hope for the next one that they don't do the same trope where they bring Steve back. I think at this point like Diana, essentially, right, will live almost forever. because she's a demigod unless someone kills her. So, you know, at some point she will have to let go. So I was kind of hoping that this would delve into that a little bit more than just their lasting moment, which was still a very nice moment. I think it really closes the second act really well. I just wish that for the next one that they can let that go. Let a sleeping dog lie, and if he's old, let him die in peace.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that's what the closing scene of the second act is all about, like, because like in order to get her powers back, she has to renounce her wish, or or like destroy the stone, which like is currently Maxwell Lord, so it's a little difficult right now. But and so basically she renounces her wish to get Steve back, and they have a very I was trying real hard not to cry, like real hard.
It was a sweet moment.
It was really nice. And also like poor Diana, like she had to lose her love twice. Ugh, oh my god.
And she couldn't even actually be there though. It's kind of sad because she doesn't actually get to see it in both accounts, because the first one he's hundreds of thousands of meters in the air. Yeah. And then in this one she can't take it. So, you know, she's kissing him goodbye, and then at some point she forces herself off of that and just walks away and can't even look back as she renounces her wish. So it is still a very heartbreaking moment. And I think throughout the second act is really what keeps the film together, I think. So because of that whole sloppiness in the first act, with the exception of the character development, I think they actually did very good at that. A lot of films, especially recently, have been really not doing a great job at developing their characters in the beginning, so then you have room for them to expand or grow or digress, you know, or whatever throughout the rest of the film. So they actually did a good job with character development. But the second act with Diana and Steve, they have the best relationship. It kind of turns into a little bit of a rom-com, which is where I think it takes some people out because they come to see a superhero movie. That's not a big deal for me. I think the latter half of Act 2 has some real kick-ass action. So when they go to Egypt, trying to find Max Lord and trying to...
It was also very Indiana Jones, just saying.
Yeah, that's fair. Like that wasn't useless. It wasn't a useless venture. Obviously, it had multiple consequences, but it still had a lot of action, and the action in the White House, and that's really where things start to fall apart for our characters. In terms of the story, I was seeing it build up. And then we get to the third act, and it just kind of, in my opinion, it just kind of falls apart. But that whole second act is really what keeps it together, and their relationship was what keeps it together. Yeah, like the first act, honestly, I was a little bored watching it, and the second act, it does feel long. And then like the second act, I was like, you know, I was like, all this action was going on, and then like, you know, Steve and Diana, and they're just lovely together. And just Chris Pine, I love him so much because he's such a good actor as well as Gal. She's also he's a good looking dude. Anyway, and then like I think like the moment started, like it literally falls apart is right after the like goodbye scene, when she's like riding the lightning strikes and like flying through the air. In my mind, I'm like, okay, she's gonna go get him. She had to say goodbye to her love because of Max and his actions. Like she's gonna go get him, and then she ends up back in her apartment. Like, where was she going? Like, where was she flying to? She had to get there at some point to get the armor.
Yeah.
From Astria.
Yeah, which I understand, but like...
Talk about later.
Okay. Like, I understand, but like, in my mind, I was like, she's gonna go. Like, and then she just kind of flew around for a little while and then like ended up back in her apartment. Yeah. So that's mistake number one, I feel like. It's visually very cool. A lot of posing, but also just like she literally like... She's Supermaned.
they did that pose probably about 3 times, so where you only had to do it once.
You didn't have to do it at all.
You didn't. Well, I think so. That's the kind of posing that I don't mind. The stuff that I hate is when you're in the middle of an action sequence where like it should look really cool, and then she's sprinting in slow motion, and it really takes away from how fast she's actually going. Because in the scene where she's running away from renouncing her wish in just her anguish, that moment, and then with the score, and comparing the two, I think the score in this was actually much better. It's much better mixed, but it's much better composed, in my opinion. So when you have that, and then you have the music that is kind of almost lifting her with it, and she's sprinting through the streets, those are the kinds of shots that I love to see, because it really goes to show the stakes, first of all, of the story, and then the just kind of impressiveness of the actor or actress or whatever. But with the whole flying, it did last a long time. And there was a lot of posing where some of those poses you didn't have to have at all. Some of them you only had to do maybe once. But a lot of them happen just so much. And it just takes away from the importance of it, I think.
So like I said, she goes back to her apartment to get her the Astoria armor. Asteria? Okay. I feel like this armor was specifically in this movie to set up a third movie. And also because of that like sort of like mid-credit scene or whatever. But because like, I say that because the armor looks cool and like she talks about it and you're like, okay, this is going to be important. But she wears it for maybe like 7 minutes. And then it's like easily like Cheetah, who Kristen Wiig or Barbara turns into the apex predator. She like she destroys it pretty quickly, at least the wings, like she like dents them and like is able to like, you know, like reach through them.
It's supposed to be the strongest part.
Yeah, because in the flashback or whatever, Asteria, she's
facing mankind.
Yeah, all the men soldiers are like surrounding her and she's like holding her own against them for like quite a while, so the other Amazonian women can like escape. So I feel like that was only in there to set up maybe a third one, or they were just trying to make her look cool, but like it only lasted for, like I said, like maybe 10 minutes, and then like you never see her in it again.
I think it definitely is setting up for the next one, because there are several hints that I didn't catch until I watched it the second time with you. But like Hysteria. Asteria's name, and like the eyes. We've talked about the eyes before. It's one of, especially what we're realizing now, is it is some of the most definitive factors in people's faces. I didn't realize that was, you know, Linda Carter, which is revealed in that end credit scene. That she's coming back as Hysteria, but she mentioned something, and she was talking about it, and I went searching for her, but when I went back, I couldn't find anything.
Until I found the armor.
Mm-hmm. So there are little nuances like that just kind of ping hints at where the third one might go. But I actually like that, and it's not so much in your face until the end, and then, you know, sometimes you don't see it the first time. Sometimes you recognize it the second time or the third time, or until somebody tells you. Yeah,
I mean, we'll just say what the end credit scene was. Basically, it reveals like Asteria is on Earth, basically. Mm-hmm. Which, like, I wonder if she as Linda Carter. I know.
So cool.
I wonder though, like for those of you who don't know, Linda Carter is the original Wonder Woman. For those of you who didn't know, but I feel like, I wonder if she didn't want to be found.
Well, I mean, she's on Earth, so maybe she was looking for her at the wrong time or in the wrong place. I definitely don't think, at least I hope not, that it's like a Luke Skywalker situation where they're looking for her and then she's like, go away. I don't think that at all. I think maybe it was just wrong place, wrong time, or the both. and now is the time.
Right.
Because I'm going to assume, now that we have also seen Diana as Wonder Woman in present day with Batman v Superman and in Justice League, you know, I think from here we're going to start moving forward. We've kind of covered the past, but supposedly there are very definitive reasons why it took place in 84, and I still haven't figured those out, aside from Ronald Reagan.
I don't really have much to say except for the ending now, which is basically Wonder Woman defeats the cheetah, Barbara, and like leaves her electrocuted, like outside.
Makes her sleepy?
I guess. I mean, I guess she's like not human anymore, so it's hard to kill her, I guess. But then, okay, so Maxwell Lord, he gets like presidential power over America.
From Ronald Reagan of all people.
Yeah, and basically like goes to like the secret broadcast, and he's broadcasting like all over the world, and he's telling people to like wish like all at once, and he's granting all these wishes all at once, and the chaos ensues and everything. And like, you know, Gal, she's having a very, sorry, that was the actress. Sorry. Diana is having a very difficult time trying to stop him. And eventually how she does is she uses her lasso of truth to like hold on to Max, and then she like spreads her own message through him via television, via lasso of truth. And basically like she's saying like to Max, but like to the people as well, and she's telling everyone to like renounce their wishes, because once they do that, everything will go back to normal. But like basically what the message is supposed to be in the movie is like truth, and it's supposed to like come back to that very first scene with the competition, but like I don't think that's what the message was about. If anything, if I really think about it, the message is almost similar to like what the Pixar Soul movies message was, that like don't take what you have for granted and like want to be something else, sort of.
I feel that. And that again is kind of why I didn't think that beginning scene was all that necessary. The only thing that really trails it back is when she just repeats the same line that was it her mother or the general said to her? Her mother said to her. But I mean, take that with a grain of salt. Like it almost doesn't matter who said it or if they said it, because it should still have that same kind of importance. I'm like searching around in my brain to see how it connects, because I'm like, wait, actually it does, but I don't think it's not that obvious.
Yeah, like I'd have to really, if it is about like truth, like I'd really have to think and like watch it again, look critically at this to find it, the message.
Like maybe I'm just dumb. It's weirdly delivered though too, I think, personally, and this kind of goes to my opinion on that third act, where, and this is why the film lands so low for me. It's easier to accept a movie that's like kind of shaky in the beginning, does pretty well in the second act, but then sticks the landing. I don't think that this movie really stuck the landing at all, especially because of this issue of consequence, but I'll get to that in a second. The way in which the message was being delivered really didn't feel all that comfortable to me. It really felt, especially because she looks like directly into the camera, and I know it's supposed to be like a point of view kind of a thing, but it feels like it's a fourth wall break, and it doesn't feel very appropriate. And it feels like they're force feeding you this message that...
Also, her speech is like very long. It's like 3 minutes.
It's like 2.5. It's long, as my rambles tend to be. But like it just feels like it's force feeding you something that you were already willing to eat. You know what I mean? Like you were already accepting, you know, that there was supposed to be a really deep message, and it's there somewhere. Like there definitely is growth for Diana, and all these other characters aside from, well, yeah, actually including Steve, go through like all these trials and tribulations, and it's not like they're flat characters. There's great characterization. It's just the message and the story itself just kind of falls apart, and then when she's force feeding it to you like that, it still doesn't make a lot of sense. But what also doesn't bode well is that I feel the third act doesn't have consequence to everything that happened. Also, you mean to tell me that every single person renounced their wish, but also that every single person who made a wish was paying attention? Or like, no, not a single person was like, oh, I wish all this would just stop and go back to normal. Like that, like, did they just negate each other? Or like, I cannot believe that.
I had that thought while I was watching the movie. Like, I was like, what if someone just wished for it to go back to normal? Like, would that solve it?
Like, you mean to tell me every single person renounced their wish? What if someone just asked for something simple, like, I want to be a successful writer? Yeah. And maybe the monkey's paw didn't have that much to take.
Well, I mean, like, I guess something that, like, they might have done to try and, like, curb that is that, like you as the audience see, like, what is happening in the world with all these wishes being made. And they're, like, horrible things. Like, this man wishes his wife, like, would die. And she dies. And he's, like, you can see he's, like, kind of, he's like upset about it. I don't know what she wished for him because he's still alive. But like, and then you see like, I wish like this would happen, then someone, like some city gets like blown up or something, and like there's like they show like a lot of death and destruction. So I feel like that's like, you're supposed to be like, everything that happens, like even if you only wish to be like a writer, like you have this world around you. So like if you could give that up to save the world, like would you?
That's true. Still, every single person. But like, I also feel with the characters and consequence it's just my biggest issue with everything, especially things that are going on right now. But Max's consequence seemed to have been throughout the film that he was losing his physical state. Like, at some point, if he wasn't, taking his vitamins, he was gonna die from all these wishes being made. But it's supposed to be that he loses his son, but I didn't feel that throughout the film, because it seems in those moments that he has with this kid, he just seems really like annoyed that he has to spend time with him. And it's not kind of the annoyed like, I don't have, like, or it's like, I don't have time for it, but it's not like, I don't have time. It's a different kind of it's a like, vindictive disappointment.
Yeah, like he's treating his son almost like a nuisance in a way.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like Max had, like, that was what it was taking. It's a cute moment at the end, but also like he just, the world goes back to normal, but what happens to Max Lord? I guess he just goes about his life with his son and they live happily ever after. I guess Barbara just goes back to being really weird and quirky, even though there are probably some things that she had learned that she could also apply to be a little less awkward, but also not be a total asshole. Diana's the only one who really had consequence, I feel.
Oh yeah, she had a big consequence too. Yeah.
But she's like the only one who had her consequence in renouncing her wish.
Yeah, I would have liked to see maybe like, because there's that like, it's like the resolution scene at the end where it's like winter time now and they're at like that market. I would have liked to see the plaza, whatever. I would have liked to see like Barbara there and also like Max and his son like there, and there's just something that like hints, even just hints that like how maybe they're like a changed like person, or like just something,
new business or whatever.
Yeah, and like for Barbara, maybe just like maybe she's extra nice now or something because she knows that like what her lack of like, I guess, empathy for others like can cost like you yourself. Overall though, like I enjoyed this movie. I'm like the messiness of Act 3 like isn't a very big turn off for me actually. Yeah, like I know in rating this movie, you and I probably have a very different rating. But like, I really don't have, like, besides those things that are just like little weird for me, like I don't really have much else to say on that. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
I just think it's weird, man. And at that ending scene where with the, I don't know, maybe it's one of those things again where it's just like me being an a-hole, where I'm just like, this is weird. But it just feels kind of strange to me that just the way that they had that interaction just felt really weird. And it was a very weak cadence for me. When you have like, if you're gonna put each thing into a movement, right? A lot of big compositions have 3 movements, just like films have 3 acts. The beginning was really not great. It was very shaky, kind of thin, shallow, and very cheesy. But like the second is really strong, and then going into the third, you expect, because the second act was so strong, that either it's going to keep that level of strength and then it's going to finish with a really powerful cadence like the first film did, or it's going to excel, which is what you would like. That's a subversion of expectations a lot of times, is when that third act does better than the rising action. If you have really strong rising action and then finishes off with a really strong, powerful cadence, this didn't have that cadence for me. And unfortunately, it's kind of the way that I view things. Like, it's not an unenjoyable film. It's still very enjoyable. It's just very sloppy, and it doesn't stick the landing for me.
Yeah, I know my mom, like, I was also wondering about like that interaction at the end with Diana and that man who was harboring Steve's consciousness. But like, I think a way you could look at it is like, Diana has never like let go of Steve. In like when she's saying her final goodbye, you know, Steve's like you can't. She's like, I can't do this. And I'm like, well, he's like, you can't be upset. Like I'm already gone. Like, you know, so it's like a very powerful like sentence, by the way. But so I think that like her seeing him, and even if the interaction between those two characters are like is weird, I think it's supposed to signify that like maybe like this, she doesn't have to get with him, like, or she doesn't have to get with anyone at all either. Like this could just be her like accepting that like what she had is in the past, and like she needs, like, for her own self, like she needs to move forward. So like you could look at it that way. Was the dialogue a bit weird? Yeah. But like it's not a big grievance for me or anything. Overall, I'll give the movie like a 78.
Actually, fair point. Thank you for putting that in perspective. I still think it's cheesy. I still think it's weird, but I guess you could still look at it as at least there's character growth for Diana. Mm-hmm. And some of it will be probably dependent on what happens in the next one, which they set up a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that can go on in the third one that they've set up, not just with Astria, but with her new powers and assumingly with his character development. I'm hopeful for the third one. I just hope that they take that, more specifically, that Patty Jenkins takes this criticism constructively and, you know, doesn't take every single criticism as a jab. Because a lot of the things that are weird about this film, I think, like I mentioned earlier, were things that she was told, like she was advised not to do, and she went, no, I'm going to do it anyway. When it's like, people aren't telling you not to do this because they want it a certain way. They're telling you because it's not good.
Yeah, they don't want you to fail. They just want like a decent product.
At the end of the day, I'm just disappointed. I'm also holding it up to that expectation. I either want to be met at that same expectation, or I want it honestly to exceed, which this did not for me, unfortunately.
What do you rate it? I'm
sorry, Wonder Woman 1984. You do not pass my class. You got a 69. I'm sorry.
They just needed one more point to be a 70.
Yeah, but that's a whole point. That's a whole point that could have happened either with the resolution of the third act or the organization of the overall tone. Sorry.
You just gave me like college PTSD. Only needing 1 point to pass.
I'm still in college, my dude.
Yeah, for comparison wise, like that kind of was the comparison. Just that, like, structurally, I think the first Wonder Woman is better. Hype wise, because I didn't really go in expecting much from 84, even though I heard like a lot of people didn't like it. I think I received it better the second one than I did the first one. Like there are moments I like and also dislike in each movie. So like, I don't think each of them is perfect, but I also enjoyed watching both of them.
Well, one thing, and this is like nitpicky, these are like 0 point whatever points, is like aesthetically this is a little bit better, because when Wonder Woman came out, that was still in the era of like DC is dark, we are the dark superhero universe, where like it's aesthetically dark and you can't see what's going on, and the CG is really bad. And you see that with the cheetah fight. Like they made it dark and rainy on purpose because the CG for cheetah was really bad. And it just, when you have bad CG like that, and like we had that discussion with the weird CG for the Mandalorian, which we'll clear the air maybe next time, but it sometimes it just really pulls it out for me, especially because we live in this kind of era where things like that they shouldn't be happening that often.
Like the technology is so prominent that like,
yeah,
why is it bad if technology around here is amazing, you know?
Yeah. Or when you have like in the same franchise where things look great. So most like the flying scene didn't look weird to me. Obviously that's all on a green screen. She's on wires. You know, her standing up like this is a little funky, but like it doesn't pull it out for me. That doesn't take me out of the moment. I'm still in the moment. I'm still enjoying it. But at least aesthetically, this one was, since you can see what's going on, with the exception of that fight scene, I'll give it points there. And like I mentioned earlier, the music was so much better mixed. Because like, especially in that softer moment, those softer moments, the first one, and this is where I think Hans Zimmer as a composer sometimes doesn't do the best with those soft moments. He likes to use a lot of percussion. He likes to use a lot of brass, and this is getting really technical, I know. There are those same kinds of moments in the first one where it's just really loud. The music is really loud, whereas like you just have to have something that's a little softer. You don't have to have all this percussion going on, especially. Whereas like this one, in that, I think that's why their goodbye, their final moment at the end of Act 2 between Diana and Steve hits so hard, at least for me, is like there's nothing distracting me from this really. I mean, there's all this stuff going on in the back, but that's not distracting. That's expected. It could have looked a little different, just to play around with it, but that's me just getting really technical. I still really like that moment, and I like the composition of this overall. I like the tone of the whole second act. I just wish that same tone was there for the rest of the film, because it would have had everything else made sense. You know, had it at least stuck the landing, it would have done better than the first Wonder Woman for me.
That is all I really have to say. Do you have anything else that you really want to get out there? Nope.
I kind of did. Not as much posing next time, please. Like let's see what Gal Gadot can do, because she is capable of a lot, and she's a very good-looking woman. But you know,
wasn't she in the military?
She was. I think she was like fitness instructor or something, or it was like combat fitness coordinator in the Jerusalem army or something. She's a very capable woman, which is why I'm saying, give us some wide shots. Don't water it down with all this crazy CG. We want to see Gal Gadot be awesome at being Wonder Woman. So
I agree. Well, I think that's all we have for you guys today with the Wonder Woman franchise. A Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984 has officially been reeled in. Thank you guys for watching, and please join me next time.